If you're new or just starting off in metalsmithing, there are a million tools available, and maybe you're searching for the right tools to get started. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you all of the tools that I use in my practice that can potentially help you as you get started or as you move forward with your metalsmithing journey. I would like to say metalsmithing is a fairly expensive hobby to get into. There's always a way to work around something. So if you don't have a specific tool, you can find a way. There's always a way. So let's go through all of the different tools that I use daily to bring all of my pieces to life. So with the essentials of metalsmithing, you obviously need metal, solder, and then a source of heat. When you get started, I highly recommend a butane torch, something like this. This is a Blazer by Big Shot GT8000. This is a really, really big torch. I had purchased this to help in melting metal. I would never have been able to use this to do delicate pieces. I recommend something a little bit smaller that has some flame control. You purchase your little butane refills, and then once this is out of fuel, you just charge it up and keep on going. I could not really work well with these. I needed more flame control, so I purchased this beauty. This is the Genentech small torch. It is different to the Smith little torch. I did my research, and honestly, there really isn't a difference between Genentech and the Smith system. The difference that I found was in the price. So I love this thing. This is an oxygen and propane combination. Do your research, figure out what's better for you. This whole kit, it all came together. You get an empty bottle of oxygen that you can go and refill. You get your valves, you get your carrying kit, and then you go and you buy your propane. The one thing that I wish this toolkit came with was a larger propane valve attachment. So this attachment can only fit on these little propane canisters as opposed to the really big ones that you grill with. I do love it. It comes with, I believe, 6 different tips and then your little handheld torch. Again, it's exactly like the Smith little torch. I just got the Genentech. The next thing you'll need is a soldering surface. I prefer the hard charcoal bricks. These retain heat really well and just make soldering a breeze. You look for the hard soldering block because they last way longer. You can see this guy is really grimy, but I can always flip it over or I can sand it down to make it like new. They also have, there's a bunch of soldering bricks out there, but I have this honeycomb-like one that I use for annealing because this reflects heat really well. So generally I'll put my piece that I'm annealing on here, keep my charcoal block behind it so that I have a really hot zone over here while I'm annealing. You're also going to want to look for a third hand. It is a little cross-locking tweezer set that comes on a little pedestal, and then I have my torch in one hand, my soldering pick in another hand, and then if I need something maybe standing up, I have it locked into these cross-locking tweezers. You're also going to need a device to move your solder around. So you can use a soldering pick. I honestly am not a fan. I don't use this very often. It is just too thick for me. I prefer tweezers. So I use the tips of the tweezers as my soldering picks. For cleaning your pieces after you've soldered them, you will need a little crock pot like this. So you just put this guy on, you'll fill it up with your pickle. There are different recipes for pickle on the internet, or you can buy pre-made pickle. And then when you're done soldering, you pop your piece in here and it gets nice and clean. If you're looking to get adventurous with metalsmithing, I highly recommend buying yourself a crucible set. If you're doing different types of metal. You'll need a different crucible for each metal type. This allows you to melt down scrap metal. Then you'll get something like this. This is a little ingot mold. So if I put this together like this, I can make wire. If I flip it, I can make sheet, and it's adjustable, so I can make however big a piece I need, and then I just use my little vise and I clamp it down and I'm good to go. Let's talk about different ways to cut metal. So these are really simple, convenient little snipping pliers. I highly recommend buying yourself a jeweler's saw. These are really cheap if you're getting just like I believe this is called a German saw frame. They have different thicknesses, so if you're working on a really long piece and you're trying to saw through it, you're probably going to need something a little bit longer than this. I have been able to make do with everything that I've made using, I think this is a 3-inch, so get yourself some decent saw blades, a simple saw frame, and you're good to go. Depending on the thickness of what you're cutting, you can also honestly just use some household scissors. So if I'm working with a very thin bezel or a thin piece of wire or sheet, I can just snip it with household scissors. Let's talk about pliers. There are a bajillion different types of pliers out there. I really only have a few types of pliers. You can make do with 2 pliers. Like, you really can. I did for the majority of my metalsmithing journey up until recently, where I started buying other types of pliers. I highly recommend getting at least 2 pliers. You can get 2 of the exact same pliers, and that's totally fine. So these pliers are my go-to for pretty much everything. I'm always using these. These are just like needle nose pliers that have a smooth finish on the inside. Really inexpensive. You'll probably pay, maybe 12, 15 bucks for 2 total. But you definitely need 2 because you need 1 to hold, 1 to work. You're also going to want to look for, maybe later on, half round pliers. So you can see one part is rounded and then the other part is flat. So if, for example, I'm trying to make something round, like a ring, I can put it in here. You can also get something like this. These are both round. These are not a necessity. I really don't use these very often. The only time I do use them is if I'm trying to make a really small jump ring. Otherwise, I use this baby. So this has 6 different sized cylinders on it. So if I'm trying to make jump rings of the same size, this thing makes it super easy. It's consistent every single time. This is great if you're making chains, bracelets, or jump rings. Something else that I highly recommend, but again is not absolutely necessary, is a pair of nylon pliers. So these are great because they won't mark your metal, and they are soft enough that if you're gently trying to put a stone in place, you can use these for that. Those are literally all the pliers I have. On a consistent basis while I'm creating, it's always these 2 needle nose, and then I'll use this half round if I'm trying to make something round. If I am making chains or jump rings, this is my go-to. So this is really nice to have. Honestly, you can get away with 4 pliers, these 4 right here, and you're good. Next, let's talk about different ways of cleaning and cleaning up your pieces. You're definitely going to want to get yourself a set of files. And depending on the metal type you're working on, if you're working with multiple metal types, you'll need multiple sets of files so that you're not contaminating, for example, silver and gold. So you're going to want to get yourself a set of big files, and they come in different shapes. So get yourself a set so that you have everything all at one go. And you're going to want to get yourself small files. So these are awesome for working in really tight places or on really small pieces. And then these are awesome for taking off larger bits of metal at one go. Honestly, my first set of files I bought from Amazon. They're awesome. I still use them. Then I went to Harbor Freight and I bought a bunch of large and then a bunch of small files as well. I also have a set for gold fill, so if you're working again with different types of metals, make sure you're not cross-contaminating. Get yourself as many file sets as metals that you're working with. You're also going to want to get some sanding sticks. Now, I'm not going to say you're going to want to get sanding sticks. I make my own. So go to whatever hardware store is near you and buy the, what are they called? The paint mixers. I had to buy them. I thought they were free. Like they used to be free, but I guess now you have to pay for them. Hopefully the hardware store by you, they are still free. But I went to Home Depot. They had like a 12-pack and they are just those paint mixers. So you'll buy yourself the paint mixers and then you'll buy yourself whatever grit sandpaper you want. I went overboard. You really don't need this much sandpaper, but I got 220, 400, 800, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, and 3,000. You're working with metal, you really don't need like 2 and 3,000. It's pretty much the same effect from 1,500 to 3,000, especially if you're going to be giving a high polish to your piece. You can stop at 1,000, 1,500, and then just use your polishing compound and be good. If you would like a tutorial on how I put these together, let me know. It's really simple, but there are some tips and tricks to make them neater so that they actually have an edge to them instead of being like a big blob. This is a non-negotiable. This is something that you absolutely must have, and that is some sort of mask. I don't recommend paper masks. You are using chemicals that are very toxic. You are literally filing off tiny particles of metal that if you're breathing them in, they can cause you harm. So I highly recommend a respirator mask as opposed to just like a cloth mask. This was like 30 bucks on Amazon, and then these are another 30 bucks. For your health, it is worth it. Don't take the air you breathe for granted. Buy yourself a decent respirator. Also, non-negotiable is some pair of safety glasses. I am going to be completely honest with you. These are blue light glasses, but they're really big for my face, so I use them as safety glasses. When I have my respirator mask on that literally comes up to my cheeks, and then these over it, it covers everything I need to. If you're not wearing safety glasses, it can go into your eye, and that's a bad day. So just get yourself a pair of glasses, something that protects your eyes while you're working. Let's talk about measuring tools, because really there's a bunch of ways to measure. Honestly, all you really need is a ruler. You can use a metal ruler, which is nice because if you have like a nice metal ruler that has a sharp edge, you can mark your metal with it. But something that has made a world of difference in my jewelry making is a digital caliper like this. So I can measure out exact lengths that I need. You can do it in millimeters or you can convert it in inches. If you're working with jewelry, you're going to be working in millimeters. There's no more exact measurements, so just use metric. So you can measure out what you need, and then you can use the little jaws here to make marks. Super precise. This one only goes to 1 decimal point. They have ones that go to 2 decimal points, which would be really nice to have. But I think this was like 10 bucks on Amazon. It's linked in my storefront, so you really don't have to splurge. The other thing that you can get, again, not a necessity, but nice to have, is a pair I forgot what they're called. I completely forgot what these were called, so it took me a minute. But you can get yourself a pair of dividers. These are, I believe, 6-inch dividers. They're too big. You don't need this big of dividers. I don't know what I was thinking when I bought these. What's really great about this is you can take like a ruler, for example, or even your calipers. You can measure out exactly how much distance you need between your dividers and then you can score your metal. So not a necessity, nice to have depending on what you're doing, but if you're just doing basic simple stacking rings, you don't need this. Something you do need if you are making rings, this is a non-negotiable, you will need this, is a ring mandrel. I love mine because, let's see, can you see? It has the ring sizes on here from ring size 0 all the way to ring size 16. You need to shape rings, you shape them on your mandrel, and you use some sort of mallet. I am not going to say hammer because hammers and mallets are different. So this is a rawhide mallet, and you'll see I work on one side because I'm a righty. So if I were to hit with this side of my rawhide mallet, I would mark my metal. But because I work, only on one side, this side is nice and soft, like you can feel it. It feels almost like leather, hide, obviously. So it no longer marks my metal. You can condition your rawhide mallets so that they don't mark or mar your metal. And this is awesome for shaping your rings. If you don't want to use rawhide for whatever reason, you can get yourself a rubber mallet. This one's really old, so when I hit it, it like dusts everywhere. You can get the newer rubber ones that are much nicer looking than this, but this again won't mark or mar your metal, so they're really nice. There's really no difference. It is a preference if you want to use rubber or rawhide. I think I completely forgot to mention a bench pin, so let's talk about a bench pin. If you want to splurge and buy yourself the whole jeweler's bench shebang, that's awesome. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. I work on a standing desk, so I stand like I work and I stand because I like to do that. You can buy, here, let me see if I can show you. You can buy a little bench pin like this. It's literally just a piece of wood. There is a little vise that goes through this hole and connects to under your table. You're supposed to screw it in. I don't want to screw it in because I have wires under my table because it is a standing desk. So get yourself a bench pin. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I think this was like 20 bucks. Let's talk about different ways to hold what you're working on. If you are just making simple stacker rings, I want to move this because it's bothering me a little bit. We're going to move it down. There we go. If you're just making simple stacker rings, you don't need these. If you're starting to set stones, you will need a way to hold what you're making. You can go out and you can splurge and you can buy yourself a ball vise. They're amazing. I would love to have one, but I don't have one. And I'm not complaining because I make do with what I do have. These are my go-tos. So this is like a little vise that you can open and close. It comes with little pins that you can put inside of here. So if I'm working on like a square piece, I can kind of lock it in there. What I love about this is this little handle fits right into my bench pin and I can spin it around. So whatever I'm working on can sit right here where I need it and it's awesome. Or we have this baby. I honestly don't know what this is called. I'm assuming it's just like a clamp, but it has two sides. It has a rounded side. So if I put a ring inside of there, it's nice and round and I can just work on the setting that I'm working on. And obviously you lock it tight so now nothing moves. Or it has a flat side, which is awesome because if I need to make sure I have a complete flat edge, I can have my piece of metal just poking through there. I can sand or file it down, and then I have a completely straight edge. You buy what fits in your budget and you make it work for you. These work for me, and maybe one day I'll buy myself a ball vise and it'll be awesome, but for now, I'm really happy with what I have. You're also going to want to look to get some sort of anvil. This is like, I love it. It's great. So it has a rubber bottom, which stops it from bouncing. Really inexpensive. You can buy yourself a nice fancy anvil, but you really don't need to because they have cheaper solutions for everything. So, but yeah, simple anvil and different hammers. Let's talk about hammers. I have 2 hammers. I am not even joking. Let me get them. Do I wish I had more? Absolutely. I need to buy myself a chasing hammer. I don't have one. Have I made do without it? Absolutely. So, you go and you buy yourself a little hammer like this. You have a flat side and you have a rounded side. So now you can do texture with this. You can do texture with this. You can melt metal down and then hammer it out with this. You really don't need a lot of fancy tools. And then you're going to say, Vanessa, you didn't have earrings on. And you're right, I didn't, but I saw these and they're so pretty, so I put them on. Let's talk about rotary tools. This is a Fordham. You do not have to buy Fordham. A lot of times we pay a lot of money for brands, and there are other brands out there that do exactly the same thing. This is a rotary tool, so it comes with a little foot pedal. It comes with the handle where you can polish and you can drill and you can cut and you can do a whole bunch of really great things depending on what your goals are. This also comes off and you have options like hand pieces that have different tips on them. So if I'm trying to move a really heavy bezel, instead of sitting there with a punch and a hammer and actually like trying to do it myself and potentially breaking the stone, I can use this, which is way more controlled and one-handed as opposed to, right, a punch and a hammer. So this gives me way more flexibility and is much safer on setting certain gemstones. So let's talk about burrs, drills, and other inserts for our flex shaft. As you start stone setting, prong, flush, any setting that isn't like a simple bezel that you fold over your stone, you're going to need burrs. I highly recommend getting yourself a set to start with. So as opposed to buying an individual burr, you buy yourself something like this. This is by Fox brand. It's great. This is their round burrs, and it starts from 0.5 millimeter round all the way to 2.3 millimeter round. I've added a couple burrs in here, so these two don't actually come with the set. You want to have multiple sizes. I also have setting burrs by the same company. This set goes from 0.9 millimeters all the way up to 5 millimeters. With setting burrs, you have to be careful. I would recommend working up to them because they do take off a lot of metal, so you can very quickly ruin a piece if you don't realize how much metal it will take off. So ball burrs or round burrs, setting burrs, and then cup burrs. If you make earrings, if you make prong settings, cup burrs are amazing. So it's literally like a little cup. I don't know if you can see that. Let me see, is this one? No, that was my biggest size. So it's literally a little cup and it sits over the metal and it twists off or files off the end so it's completely round. Very comfortable for earring backs. And then you get a nice rounded finish for a prong setting. This is by the exact same company, Fox. To lubricate all of your burrs and your drills and your saw, you will need some sort of lubrication. Honestly, you can use a candlestick, or you can go and buy like an actual lubricant. I got mine from Walmart. Online, you can buy from a jewelry supply store, or like I said, you can use a candlestick. In terms of polishing, I have this kit. I use like this big fluffy guy to get my final polish. This gives such a nice polish at the end. And then I also have my polishing compound set. So I bought a set from Luxor. It came with 4 different polishing compounds, 2 wheels for a polishing lathe, and then I have these little bristle brushes that I put into my flex shaft. And so I'll usually start with like this and one of the more abrasive compounds. Check your compound chart if you're buying a set so that you know how abrasive it is and whether it's used for a certain type of metal. And then I also have a rouge compound here that I use with my big fluffy. You can also buy like I honestly don't remember what this is called. I think it's like a rubber polishing wheel. This is the pink one. Let's talk about drills. If you like flush setting, I love flush setting, you're gonna need drills, different sizes. So they usually come in a pack like this. So you'll get 6 drills of the same size. I like to get them in the packs, and I just buy the sizes that are in range of what I'm flush setting. So I'll have anywhere from 0.6 millimeters all the way up to 2 millimeters is my largest, and then I just have in increments going up in between. Something else I highly recommend if you are prong setting, this is a cone burr. They call them a crosscut cone burr. So it's literally just like a tapered burr, like really thin, and it comes to a little point. Not a necessity, but if you are starting to prong set, I would buy them so you can get used to them so that you can become more confident with these types of burrs. You're probably going to want to look for some sort of burnishers or bezel rocker. I believe I got these as actually no, I got these as a set and then this on its own. It makes pushing the metal over the stone much easier. I recommend buying a set of burnishers or a single burnisher. You could really make do with one. If you're looking to get into bead setting, you will need a set of beading tools. So these have a whole bunch of beading, different size beading tools on there, and they come with a handle, which is awesome. It's a one size fits all, so you can literally just swap out different beading tools. It sits in there super snug, so it's a nice set to have. But again, you don't need this unless you're trying to work on bead setting. Another thing you don't need, unless you're looking for a specific reason to have it, is a dapping block. Okay. It comes with different size dappers. Not actually sure what they're called. And then this cool little funky looking cube that has different caves for each of the dapping blocks. I used to try and make prong settings using this. I have since changed my style of prong settings, so I don't really use this a whole lot anymore, but fun little idea for this is you now have dowels in consistent sizes. So if you're looking to do a lot of maybe chain making and you need something that has the same diameter all throughout, you can easily wrap wire around something like this. In terms of finishing, I highly recommend buying a tumbler set. So usually it comes with 1 or 2 canisters, and then the big machine that it sits in where it rotates the canister. You'll need to buy, let's not do that. You'll need to buy buck that goes inside your like little drum here. So the more difference that you have in buck, which is just like your stainless steel pellets, the more difference that you have in your buck, the better it can get into little nooks and crannies of whatever you're tumbling. So when you've finished making a piece, if you're not going to sit there and hand polish everything, you throw it into your tumbler, you add your water, you add your either cleaning solution or Dawn dish soap, you set it on the tumbling rotating belt for like an hour, and it comes out and it's perfectly shiny and it's work hardened and it's really nice. I bought my tumbler from Harbor Freight, but they didn't have buck to go along with it. I had to buy that separately from Amazon. I believe on Amazon they have sets where you can buy the tumbler and the buck together. But it's really efficient, especially if you're doing a bunch of polishing all at once. You throw it all into your little drum here, polish it up, and in an hour, everything is nice and polished. So I completely forgot to mention a good thing to have when you begin stone setting is a loop, a magnifier. So, oh, you can kind of see right there, my skin, but it makes for like a nice quick reference when you're trying to set a stone. I use a loop for now. I will eventually get a microscope, but again, microscope is a few $100s. A loop is probably a couple tens of dollars. And then the last thing that I'm going to recommend, again, this is not a necessity unless you are planning to melt your own metal and like build your own wire or sheet. You're going to want to look to get a rolling mill. So this is an economy rolling mill. As you can see, it's really small, but it offers wire. I have a second one that I always have set up for sheet. The one thing that I don't like about the economy rolling mills is the small gears on the side. So if I'm trying to open this up really wide because I have a thicker piece of metal that I'm trying to push through here, if my gears are no longer lined up, that happens and it's really annoying. So you really have to end up working your piece with a hammer before putting it through the rolling mill. It's not the end of the world. I just wish I would have known that prior to buying the prior to buying this, so that I could have taken into account that they do need to be touching in order for the gears to spin. That's everything that I use on a regular basis. I know it seems like a lot. That doesn't even scratch the surface of tools that are available for metalsmithing. You can look into things like ultrasonic cleaners. I do have an ultrasonic cleaner. I also have like a ring stretcher and maker smaller. I don't know what to call it. Like, what do you say when you shrinker? Like if you have just a simple bin and you put it in there and it like compresses it into a smaller size. I do have one of those. Do I really use it very often? No. Thankfully it was a gift, so I didn't spend any money on it. Doing resizes very often for repairs or stuff like that, then I would recommend buying the enlarger. Otherwise, you don't need it. I also have an engraver, like an inside engraver that was gifted to me. I don't quite know how to use it yet. I know how to use it, but I don't know how to calibrate it properly because at the moment it puts the engraving too close to like the top of the ring. So I have to figure out how to calibrate it. Maybe then I'll start using it more. It's not a necessity. Am I so grateful that I have it? Absolutely. And will I learn how to use it one day? Yes. But for what I'm doing with my metalsmithing career, it's not something that I need. So that's pretty much everything that I use on a regular basis. I'm not going to go into like tools that you would use to hold gemstones because maybe you're not even working with gemstones and you really don't need these. I just like to pick them up and like look at them because I think they're pretty, but you don't need these. Hope it was helpful. If you have questions about anything, let me know. I'm happy to answer them. If you would like tutorials on, for example, how to make those sanding sticks, let me know. And I hope you have a great day.